You're listening to a 4x4 Radio Network podcast.
Hey folks, welcome to the next episode of On the Trail with Kevin and Scott. I'm Kevin, the engineer, the guy who usually reads the instructions, follows them, uses the appropriate tools, and you are my co-host.
And I am Scott. I'm the slapstick parts guy that frantically tried to find the post-it note to remind you guys this is show 95.
He actually wrote it down this time,
I
folks.
did
I'm
write it down
impressed.
this time. And so, again, as I always try to derail poor Kevin's train of thought, remember, you'll always share what worked for us and what didn't. And as always,
It's up to you to choose what you want to do with your Jeep. So please, do your research, read the instructions,
and like I almost didn't do, follow them.
follow them, even if you write them yourself.
Well,
that I would have thought was a nice touch. You wrote your own instructions and then almost didn't follow your own instruction.
Well, I want to show the Patreons this in the video. If you look, it looks like I drew a nice tree, and it's actually some words there somewhere. So, hey,
So,
Jeepers.
anyway, now that we're back to business
Yes.
here, Scott, what I've seen is a whole bunch of posts on the interwebs of all the different things that, if you guys haven't figured out by now, he monitors all the internet and basically goes, Kevin, here, answer this.
Well-
but there's been a lot of traffic since you are part of that new and elusive club, the Gladiator owner.
Oh, yeah. Well, first off, you get a little ahead because we got to pace ourselves because it's time for some announcements, okay? Today's lunch will be tater tots and a mystery meat. Also, real quickly, though, just before we start, we got to get the announcements out of the way. The day the show comes out, Crawling for the Fallons, pre-registration begins.
Oh, yes.
Yes, so Off-Road United, I think, is the website, and they can get you squared away to do some
great
great
event,
wheeling.
great wheeling, and for great cause.
Yeah, and also, too, can't read the rest of my handwriting, so I guess we're going to keep moving on. So, Kevin, how was your few weeks? I know mine was crazy at work.
We are back to normal, folks. Not that we ever really qualified as normal. We've had a kind of an interesting morning here, getting things ready. Scott came over. We did a little bit of emergency. Well, I wouldn't call it emergency.
No. Let's go the 3 shows back to 93. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, when we said, about the part for my AC sitting on my floorboard that I hadn't got to yet.
It was still sitting on his floorboard when he showed up today.
Cough. 6 weeks later. We did some really cool stuff because I brought over my own meter. I wanted you to show me how to use it. That's probably be the next show.
Yep.
But we took the time and actually installed that part.
We did, and we actually took the old one out. I showed him how to use the factory service manual, to look up how that part was used, to look up the information on it. And in fact, some of the frustrations of when the data that you really want isn't available. And so then we used the new part and the old part and did some testing on both of them here on the desk. And like you said, I think we'll make some show, a little bit of a show about that on the next show, because this one's got a little bit of subject matter over what the last couple of weeks has been for both of us in terms of our vehicles.
Well, I was going to segue by saying this. Ron over at Red Scorpion loaned you, what tool was
It's
Excuse me, I hiccuped.
That was
Exactly.
So that was not an audio error. That was Scott's gastrointestinal system suing for equal time on air.
No,
Now that was the lower system.
that would come from the basement.
But he's basically it's an Autel MX808, which is a diagnostic and programming handheld tool that Ron uses at his shop to do gear. He's got a real smart going
I do
here.
because I've been growing up in the 80s. 808 kick drum. Moving on.
And I've been looking into getting one, and we'll
For a
get to the
reason.
story, for that behind that. I've been looking at the Autels, the Snap-ons, some of the other manufacturers that all provide the little things. And for those that don't know, if you have an OBD2 scanner that you use, they're great, but they're basically a read-only tool. And there are certain things in your vehicle that you may need to change. You can't do that with most OBD2 scanners. All you can do the most is clear the codes, the fault codes. So to do more things like add keys, change settings, and that kind of stuff, you have to have a programmer. Yeah. And so I've been investigating a programmer. So, and there's a reason for that.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things we wanted to get into because, my work's picking back up. things are happening. Of course, I'm on the Gladiator scene all the time, and one of the subject matters that was brought up, actually, I don't really know the best way to segue. I mean, but I guess it's very interesting.
There
because
is a fervor online about why can't we have the
our diesels.
diesel Gladiators and, quite frankly, JLs and everything else.
And it's kind of interesting because everyone says, the diesel Grand Cherokee did fine, for the most part, and they discontinued it. And there's a reason why they discontinued it a little bit, doing a little bit of digging.
Yep.
And one of the things brought up on the forums is that they're having problems overseas because people are doing short trips.
Well,
and they're feathering the throttle, trying to get the most mileage.
And let me get to that, because this is what came up interesting, folks, was we're talking about his posts and all that stuff going on, and he starts the same way. And then I'm sitting there going, okay, my last week, and it cost me a fair chunk of money. Yes, cost me.
It cost you a JK bumper.
Every bit of a JK bumper, every bit of a MSRP, not even discounted,
not even the Amazon one.
What happened, folks, was I have a pretty good stable of vehicles. A large percentage of them don't have spark plugs.
Yeah.
So I have become somewhat familiar with the current emissions issues on most of the diesel vehicles.
Yeah.
And there's a reason my TJ stays gas.
Which is interesting, because I know for a while there you looked at getting that 3 point or the 2.6 what
the 3.0 V6 conversion that Cummins was talking.
Yeah.
And I may yet still investigate that. All right, I still
or 2.8 was it 2.8?
2.8. I'm sorry, the 2.8 V6. It's a sexy little engine as far as my world goes, but I'm weird that way. But folks, as you know, diesels themselves are heavy particulate generators, and they also
rolling coal.
They tend to roll coal, and they also are high temperature. And what high temperature does is it creates NOx or NOx, and I don't mean knock, I mean nitrous oxide emissions.
Sorry, Cherry Gunner.
And so you would now have a emissions control system that most manufacturers have gone to, even all the way up to the big semis, that are SCR, selective catalytic reduction. It's kind of like the catalytic converter in your gas-powered Jeep, but it is more of a screen filter. And then when it gets a certain amount of that soot caught in it, there's a cycle that's initiated where the engine begins to add fuel and actually does an afterburn. If you can ever seen those videos of people with the diesels running and you see the flame coming out the stack, particularly if you go to any of the tractor pulls or truck pulls, when they go from rolling coal to it builds up and you get that rolling stack of flame. Well, that raises the exhaust temperature. Well, then they inject the DEF. I'm sure you guys have all seen, DEF here, DEF there, and that's diesel exhaust fluid. And what it really is distilled water and urea. Yeah, crystalline urea, same stuff that comes out of you and me, but it's synthetic. And that breaks down in that high temperature zone and burns off the soot.
I just picture a guy in a lab going, it's almost there. It almost tastes and smells like it.
Oh,
because they're making it synthetic. Moving on, family show. So I just think it injects.
So it injects into the exhaust stream just above these, the screen filter assembly.
Right.
And there's a catalytic reaction that occurs that consumes the particulate byproducts from diesel fuel.
Right.
Okay. And it has to be low sulfur diesel fuel. Hence the new diesel fuels that are out there,
right,
as opposed to the red dyed stuff for off-road use only, for construction equipment and the farm equipment and that. So where that plays in and why this all suddenly ties together in one little tech story, and that is Mama's vehicle through a check engine light. And it's I'm going to tell you right now, I have, we've got our little logo up here with the face mask on, because I actually have a vehicle. And that damage to the vehicle and the subsequent repair bill is directly attributable to the current pandemic.
Yeah, which is kind of interesting when you tell people, yes, the current pandemic killed my car.
What? Yeah, and that's exactly. They're all like, say what? Your car got sick? Well, yes and no.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know it went to machinery. Well, it doesn't. We all here at my stable have been trying to comply with the recommended, what do you want to call it? A
What'd you call it?
lockdown, the distancing, the
You called it social something the other day. Last time we recorded social.
it's social.
Distancing sounded too weird, but you said social something. I don't know.
I don't know, but social isolation.
That's what it was. Something like that.
Well, here's the thing: diesels that run a DEF system need to have at least a 30-minute high temperature run once every couple of weeks. Now, it kind of varies, and it varies a lot on your driving style. If you're an easy start, in other words, if you had a straight exhaust, you wouldn't be rolling coal, well, you could probably go longer. If you're a little lead-footed and enjoy the torque of the diesel, like me, you might be a little shorter, and you need to get it out there.
Yeah.
The engine needs to get up to, typically over, I think, 1,500, 1,800 RPM and stay there like a freeway trip. All right, well, when you're in lockdown, you're running here to the grocery store, back home. Here to the grocery store, back home. Here to the drugstore, back home.
Yeah.
Maybe to Walmart to see if they finally have some toilet paper back in stock, back home. None of that from the current residence is a freeway trip for me.
Yeah, it's only a couple miles.
All inner city driving. Well, my dear wife got away with probably almost 2 solid months before we got a check engine light that basically was a code that says particulate filter inefficiency. And it takes you a little while to figure out what the heck's that mean. It just means, hey, your filter's plugging up,
Right.
and you ain't getting hot enough to clean it off. So you need to do something about that. Now, it's not one of those critical codes. Now, if you let it go and it builds up to the point that the exhaust system can't be cleaned, you're in trouble, and that is really expensive.
Right.
So immediately I'm like, hon, I know we're in lockdown, but we need to make a road trip. I don't even care if we don't get out of the vehicle. We just got to get out there and make a road trip. So we're about an hour away from Orlando, and she goes, well, there's a scrubs store, because she works in a medical facility. And because of this whole thing and some of the changes, she needed to get some new scrubs. And locally, the scrubs and the colors and the styles weren't available, but they were in Orlando. I'm like, sounds like a road trip to Orlando. So we pack up our face mask, we pack, all that kind of stuff, and we head off to Orlando.
Eastbound and down, pretty much.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And set the cruise control, and sure enough, I'm cruising along. And if you pay attention, you can tell when it goes into regen mode because the engine noises change a little bit. It holds speed just fine, but and we probably went 20 minutes down the road and everything's fine, and I feel it do it again. Well, okay, if it's really plugged, that's exactly the proper computer sequence. As you do a regen, you check, and what it's looking at is back pressure, the pressure upstream and temperature upstream, and the pressure downstream and temperature downstream of the reactor, and it can judge when the filter's clean. And it did it a second time. Everything's hunky-dory. And we keep on going, and we get to Orlando, and we get in the vehicle, and we turn around, we start coming back home. I'm like, well, hey, this is great. We got it taken care of. No sweat. Check engine light came on. Crud. Well,
I don't think that's a word you used.
I'm going to stick with crud, okay?
Okay.
Family show. And so I did have my scan tool with me, so I plugged in my scan tool. Now I had a NOx Bank 1 sensor out of range or not functioning.
Uh-oh. Wah, wah.
Wah, wah, wah. It's basically equivalent to your O2 sensor, folks, on a gas-powered vehicle that has a catalytic converter. You have an upstream, excuse me, and a downstream sensor.
Right.
And it compares the two notes on those two. And it's reading the oxides of nitrogen levels in your exhaust gases.
Right.
And that one can be a little problematic because that one's used as part of the fuel loopback control code, just like your upstream O2 sensor is telling the engine whether to richen or lean the mix. So when we look at that, I was like, okay, did some research. You can clean them. I was like, okay, well, it just got sooted up.
Yeah, you got some gunk in it.
So I took it apart and I cleaned it and I soaked it and I did this and I did that, and it's still doornail dead. And I started digging around. I'm like, all right, that's emissions control gear. Now, federal mandates, depending on your model year, you either have a 770 or an 880 on your emissions componentry. So I call up my local dealer, and we make an appointment, and we tootle on in there, and they pull it up, and they go, yep, you got an OX death, needs a new sensor. And I said, fine. Is that warranty? No.
Huh?
That's what I said. Huh?
Yeah.
no comprende, señor. And I went back and I started digging. Now, of course, at this point, I'm kind of committed. So I'm like, okay.
Right.
Let me put it to you this way, folks. That was 4 digits to the left of the decimal point to change out that sensor.
Yeah.
And we'll get to some other technical parts of it that was a little bit of an eyeball raiser for me, kind of like, say what?
Yeah.
But went home, did some Googling. And yes, our vehicle is of a year that it should have been covered. Well, not should have been covered. That's the wrong statement. That the vehicle falls under the 770, should have been 7 years, 70,000 miles. But that is for the actual, what do I want to call it, non-consumable components.
Right. Yeah.
And
love that
apparently
word.
somewhere along the line, and you know what, in a way I kind of have to agree. It's not just the diesels, but the diesels and even your catalytic converter and those things. There are certain components that the federal government has mandated are long life components and will be warranted under the 770 or 880. There are other components that are consumables. They wear out.
They take a beating.
They take a beating. And it turns out that the NOx sensors, even though they are expensive little boogers, are directly in the exhaust stream. The upstream one sits there right in that fuel-rich ignition zone. So it's literally in the fireball.
Yeah.
And it only had I think it was 2-year, 40,000-mile warranty, and we're at 52,000. So it was out of warranty. It served its purpose and died.
Yeah.
The real thing is, well, why didn't you just change it yourself, Kev? Well, I could have. But it turns out that the brand of vehicle that we have, got a 3-point star on the hood just in case you can't figure that one out. It uses a really interesting computer algorithm. Now, we all change components on our vehicles, Jeep specifically. Yeah. A lot of things are just replace it, okay? And then it starts working. Maybe works a little better, but it just starts working. There are some vehicles that because a component, a sensor or something like that has to be calibrated in. All right.
That's the key word.
Okay. Well, and a lot of them, some of them are calibrated by, they have a number on the back and you have to type in that number into the computer when you install it. And hence the programmer side. Other ones are, you have to do a reset on the computer kind of thing. You put it in learn mode. Well, ours, you actually have to go in and you have to erase what they call an adaptation.
Oh, God, I love this.
Where it resets it, but you have to select the specific component. It's not just an overall turn the battery off and unplug it for 15 minutes. Yeah.
A quick question now. At what point do you use the sextant and also guide by the star charts?
I was pretty close to that point.
I make that joke at work.
And the good news is the dealer that I work with was very good and helpful, and they were very nice to explain it. But I now realize that here I am outside of the let them replace it. Mama loves her vehicle, so I now am going to have to take care of this vehicle.
Yeah.
To that end, I now need a programmer.
Yes.
And that has become part of the study, hence the reason I have a friends unit to see if it does this erase adaptations and make sure it's one I wanted. I've gone down to a couple other shops that I know and work with who have, told me which brand they like, and they're all good. I don't care whether you've got a Snap-on, an Autel, a Cornwell Tools, they're pretty much everybody likes their tool, which tells me that, okay, we've got some good stuff out there.
You're on the right track.
How does this affect you guys in the Jeep world?
Yeah, because that's what I was going to say. Basically, how do we bring this back to the Gladiator?
Well, that's where I'm going now.
Yeah.
So what I've got to do is I've got to have this specialty equipment to be able to maintain a diesel-powered vehicle. And in my case, I've got Mama's car, my truck. Mm-hmm. Our RV is a big international with a Cummins diesel in it. Even my tractor has a Yanmar computer in it with a DEF system. Well, mine doesn't actually use DEF. Mine just does a hot regen on it because it's only so there's 4 vehicles.
And now, the daughter's car.
Well, daughter's is gas.
Yeah.
The Jeep is gas. But my generator, I have an 8K generator that happens to be an
Computer
Onan
controlled.
diesel engine. So, folks, this is the challenge, and this is kind of why I think Jeep is dragging their heels, is the manufacturers that are offering diesels. Now, Ford obviously has their big commercial series, and so does Chevy, and so they're set up already to handle diesels.
Well, you talked before the show, and it's interesting because when they talked about like everyone's pushing and pushing and pushing for these Jeeps, again, a lot of people are going to use them. Like I said, they're going for the mileage.
Right.
They're not going to drive it like they stole it. And sometimes you need to drive a diesel like you stole it.
Exactly.
But we talked about real estate.
We talk about real estate, and that's where I was going with this.
Okay, cool.
Is Mama's car is a small car, okay? And it's when I get underneath of it and I look at the SCR, okay, the screen system, the selective catalytic reduction unit, it's about a foot long.
Yeah.
All right. And this is the little vessel that catches soot and then burns it off.
Yeah, it's about the size of a smart water bottle, a foot long.
Yeah, well, it's a little fatter than that, but yeah, it's probably football size, maybe a little bit bigger than a football.
Yeah.
The one in my Ford,
Yeah.
okay,
It's the size of a football stadium.
Yeah, the reactor on my F-250 is every bit of 5 feet long.
Yeah.
The one on my 350 prior to that was probably 7 foot long. That was the big Super Duty dually.
And the one on your RV takes up a bedroom.
Pretty much. Pretty much. And so what you're seeing there is amount of real estate that a vehicle has. These things have a lot of wires and sensors hanging off of them, which would be susceptible to ground contact in a heavily off-roaded situation.
People are even having problems with their muffler on the Gladiators taking damage from rocks.
Yeah, and that's just the muffler. Imagine if it had wires, injectors,
And a big old
sensors,
3 foot long diesel reactor.
reactor. The other thing about diesel reactors, they're a reactor. They get hot. They get 800 degrees hot. Oh, gee, I'm off on a trail in the fall in the nice dry. Why is that fireball chasing us?
Yeah. Or a stream crossing with an 800-degree quenched metal.
Oh, God, can you hear the ping and the screech right now?
Yeah.
And as your skid plate breaks the welds and the reactor falls off. There's a lot to a diesel today. It's not like the old GM 2 cycles that, you basically poured diesel fuel in one end and it screamed, they used to call them whistling jimmies or. And now all of that stuff plays into it. So, I'm looking at this as would I really want to have to go through all that to have a diesel that I have to take care of, I have to use? Now, if you're a hauler, if you're out on the road and you're doing a lot of highway miles, don't get me wrong, I love my diesel. Absolutely not going to sell my diesels. But you have to have a slightly different mindset and a different driving style. And it's not that you go out on the freeway and hot rod. That generates soot. You got to go out and I hope you have cruise control, because it's the best way to do a regen is to get it up to speed, set the cruise control, and listen to the tunes for a while, and just let it do its things.
Or listen to your favorite podcast.
Well, that's true too. Yeah. The key is you need to run them, and it's going to vary a little bit for everybody, but let's just say you need about a 30-minute run.
Yeah.
Now, my first couple of diesels, I drove to work 35, 40 minutes every single day, freeway run. Perfect. I never had a problem with the first diesel. The second one was towing an RV trailer, and we were all over the place with it, going to events and that kind of things. Again, never had a problem with it.
Yeah.
But my wife's little diesel, much as she loves it, and in the normal world, she's off running around the country and doing what she needs to do. Not really a problem. However, during the lockdown for 3 months, it was your little short run, short hop.
Yeah.
And it choked up. And we were able to blow it out. And knowing what I know now, I wish I had kind of partway through, once a month, let's take a scenic ride over to the beaches and drive down the beach and then come home or something like that. Yeah. So if they do issue you, and by the way, that's part of the issue why they pulled the Grand Cherokee that was diesel powered off the line, because people were buying it like a city car going, hey, this is wonderful. This is great.
I'm getting great mileage.
And they kept having under warranty replace SCR catalytic reactors and other things, and people were letting the DEF tanks go dry. And were they screaming? If you let your DEF tank go dry, you get a little countdown clock, and most of them are saying you have 10 starts left.
Now, did the diesel Grand Cherokee have a DEF tank?
I don't know.
Okay.
I haven't researched that, but
We're just paraphrasing.
we're paraphrasing. But a lot of vehicles, when people move to diesel, it takes a different mindset. It's no different than, I'll be honest, here's the flip side. Everybody who got a Tesla.
Yeah.
All right. Now, Tesla advertised the Model S. I have a very good friend who has a Tesla with a Model S, and it was advertised, I believe it was a 300-mile range on one charge. And people were getting them and then complaining because they were getting 220, 210, 195. Yeah. What's going on here?
You lied to me.
You lied to me. Well, Tesla didn't lie. Okay. Elon Musk and his crew, the car is capable of a 300-mile range, but it's also tremendous acceleration. It's got all kinds of power. Everything in it is electrically operated. So here you are showing off to your friends, racing that Ferrari down the street because you can out-accelerate him.
Right.
I'm sorry, there's only so many kilowatt hours in those batteries.
And if
you use it on the freeway in cruise control, it'll go.
Right.
But if you're jackrabbit starting, if you're running around with your friends, if you're flashing, if you're using that power for other things, it's not there to turn the wheels.
Well, yeah, you're charging your phone, you're listening to the radio, you got 4 friends inside there,
Yeah.
Again,
I think, to be honest with you, I think it's the rabbit starting and enjoying that thrust as you come firing out from the stop sign.
Well, hey, it does give you like the Star Wars going through warp speed. I mean, come on, that big screen. I mean, that's part of the cool.
It is.
You got to do that.
It is, but but that's just the opposite of the diesel. Whereas the diesel, people are driving it ginger-footed, and being or those that are jackrabbiting are loading up the reactor screens with tons of soot. That's why the diesels suddenly jumped back up, is they took all the other emissions control stuff away because they could do what they call, after treat, which means after combustion, as opposed to pre-treat or during combustion. Now, not all of them. EGR still in there and a few things, but they got rid of a lot of the stuff that kind of was strangling the diesels in the 80s and 90s, and now they're kind of opening back up because we can just make the diesel run at best and deal with the soot afterwards. So, when you're looking at the diesels, and I know you want the diesels, but make sure your lifestyle would support a diesel.
Well, and on the flip side of the coin, everyone says, the diesel's better for towing and all that, and it is. But
it doesn't change the chassis. It doesn't change your brakes.
You can only tow 5,000 pounds with the diesel Gladiator when it comes out because the gross confined vehicle weight can only be so much, and a diesel engine is heavy.
And the thing is, folks, most trailer restrictions are not on pull ability. That's what we buy it for, but that's not where the rating comes from. The rating comes from 2 major areas. One, braking is probably number 1, and your physical chassis strength, number 2.
Yeah.
To be able to handle and steer and direct that load. The engine's probably any vehicle out there that you can think of that you'd say, that would probably tow way more than they're rated to tow as far as physically moving it. There's enough power there. On the flip side, can it stop it? And can it steer it? And will it break in half if you do it too much? And we've seen a little bit, of that even with the gas-powered Gladiators.
Well, again, there's as always, there's more to that story. But I mean, like, as far as everyone else says, where they talk about, I had a Ram before this, and I'm just not that happy with it. And I'm like, yeah, again, you're not comparing apples to oranges. This is a mid-sized truck. Everyone wants, it should have had a V8. Well, name another mid-sized truck that's got a V8. Mm-hmm. There isn't any. For me, the 3.6, again, with the 8-speed and the 410 gears, you put your foot in it, you're gone. You know what I mean? As far as a Jeep goes, it moves.
What you want is an off-road sports car in a truck's clothing
that costs half a bag of Funyuns.
Well, that too. No, it's just and feel free to give me counterpoints when you guys get on the our Facebook page and send me some emails back. But this is where I see it, and right now Jeep is. The Chrysler Fiat brand, they're very savvy, and they're looking, and they're listening to you guys talk about it, but they're also paying attention to how you're using the vehicles.
Right.
And they're not necessarily going to set up and build a vehicle. They made it clear to us at SEMA last year on the 2-door. As much as everybody's howling for the 2-door Gladiator, the market's not there.
Yeah.
They really believe the market's is just not there. And, the number of people that want it and they loud voices are great, but does that really equate to the number of dollars in the showroom floor? It's the same thing with the diesel, but now you're adding another side to the equation, is how many dissatisfied people after they start with a diesel, and then after the first regen or 2 regens that fail because you're not driving it enough and you're not using it the way it is, and then you either trade it in or you come back to the dealer with complaints, that costs Chrysler either more sales or, obviously service dollars.
Yeah.
And so they're interested in what makes the majority the happiest.
And that's and you put the nail on the head with that, because as much as everybody wants the 2-door or the 2-door Gladiator, as they told us, 2-door Jeep Wrangler sales is only a very small percentage. It's like less than 25% of the actual Wrangler sales.
I think it was less than 20, but
yeah. But why are you going to go through the tooling and building of that just for someone else to go, oh, it's ugly anyways?
Right. Whereas the 4-door JLs are still moving like crazy. So the fun thing is, those of you with diesels, yeah, roll on, Buck. I'm with you. I enjoy it. I love it, but I know what I'm up to with it, and my lifestyle supports them. Everybody says, well, over in Europe, they're all diesel. Yep, been there many times, and they are, and they're very small displacement, and they're high revving, and they really haven't, at least last time I was there, which was 2 years ago, Scott, I think, when we were in Italy, it was primarily, they aren't doing the DEF reduction. They're doing I forget what the term is. It's a lower temperature, lower, the engines are tuned differently.
Yeah.
But they're also doing, 600 RPM shift kind of thing. So they don't roll coal there in normal, except a few of the older double-decker buses in London.
Well, even then, I think those are outlawed.
Yeah. So, again, are you willing to make the adjustment in your life and driving style for a diesel? If you are, you'll be a happy diesel person, and a lot of us are. A lot of us really are. But on the other hand, there is no panacea for everybody.
Well, and that's the hard part is Chrysler trying to be everything to everybody. That's one of the things when I see this every day, and you touched on it with all the sensors and wires and technology. Everyone goes, well, I don't want that. I don't want. Well, unfortunately, the federal government, the federal government sets standards for emissions, performance, fuel mileage, anti-theft.
Yep.
Okay. And
safety
and everything. So, and I get it. And in a way, I'm one of those people. I love my LJ. I love my LJ to death. But on the same time, too, is that going from the LJ to the Gladiator, I'm sorry, it rides so much nicer. But that's why I kept both.
Right.
That way I can have my old school thick sheet metal. I don't care about the environment right now. It's an inline 6 from the 50s. Can I add some extra zinc? Do I just pour the zinc pellets in the engine to keep it running? What do I do,
Yeah.
But again, that R&D costs money. The maintenance costs money. All these things they cost money, And again, like we talked about, is it you're crossing that line between a trail rated vehicle that can do a lot of things that almost nobody probably will use
or even pay for,
compared to someone who's just going to go out and buy an older Jeep anyways and roll it.
Yeah. And there's
and roll it. I mean by driving down the road.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure what you were talking about. If you're really into the what do I want to call it, the raw side of Jeeping, well, go restore an antique.
And that's, I want to pick up, if you don't mind, take a quick break.
Sure.
I want to come back on that because it's a very cool subject, because I think that's a really cool idea. We could bring something up because I have an idea on that subject.
Okay, I can see the smoke rolling around your headset. So, all right, before you hurt yourself,
I'm burning.
Let's take our break.
All right. And I do want to give a quick shout out if you want to jump right into this, Kevin.
Oh, let's go for it. It's kind of right there. You know, you didn't.
Yeah.
And Mark, that was not product placement. He actually is.
Yes. I'm using the cup. But Mark at Wrangler Fix, I guess he's going to do some picture kind of stuff. But he sent us a couple things that was a really great gift.
Right.
And we just want to show our appreciation because Mark is a Patreon.
Yeah, he's one of our Patrons. He's also a listener. So thank you, Mark, for both. And he decided that, well, here's the twist. Obviously, you guys everybody else here listens to us a little bit and liked the show with Mark.
Yes.
Because apparently y'all have been calling him, and I guess he's doing good for you because you guys keep calling him. So that's awesome. And so he took a moment and he basically wanted to do something kind of as a, I guess, a nicety for us for having him on the show.
And again, so contact him if you're interested in some of this kind of stuff. It's really, really super cool. This is just one of the ones he sent.
Yeah, this is aluminum, folks. I guess I should show you the back because for me, from an engineer, this is really cool.
Yeah.
And he took one of the shots that I had of slightly altered on a trail, kind of tongue in cheek. It's an oops.
Yeah.
You can see the dust as I was straddling a trench run in the hills of Georgia on an uphill climb. And was honestly talking on the CB at this time and was not paying attention that if you notice that the groove goes at an angle and then goes this way, and I was doing really good, and I was talking to somebody else, and the rear end decided it was going its own way. There was quite a bit of consternation going, are you going over? I was like, no, I'll get out.
Yeah.
But you can see the little dust cloud there as we kind of slid in, and I just laugh. I can see my wife's death grip on the door.
The crumpling metal.
But no, there was no crumpling metal. It was just that pucker factor as the seat cushions got sucked up. So anyway, Mark, this is absolutely awesome.
Yes.
I've heard of printing on glass, and I've seen plenty of aluminum that had pictures attached to them, the paper and that kind of stuff. But this appears to be actually the material itself treated in some sort of photographic process. Yeah. This is absolutely awesome. Thank you very, very much.
Appreciate it.
It will go in the new studio when it gets built over the next year. And yes, I am. I'm working on that. So we'll see how it goes. So thank you very much, Mark. It's greatly appreciated.
Yes, we really appreciate it.
And no, nobody has to send us gifts. We understand that, but this just was too cool not to show you.
It was, absolutely. Hey, Jeepers, don't forget, as always, to check out everyone at the 4x4 Radio Network, if you don't mind. Say hi to everyone there, and also to join our Patreon page. We got some really cool things there. We are going back to videoing now, so I'm waving hi to the Patreons right now who are seeing this. So, again, videos up for them for the first 6 weeks or 4 weeks, whatever we decide, and then the videos going to be public after that. Behind-the-scenes stuff, yada, 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 all that. And, again, special thanks to Mark, one of our Patreons at Wrangler Fix. We appreciate that. So I'm going to flip the garage. Well, it's not really a garage switch. It's going to be back to me talking some more. We'll be right back. Okay, Kevin. So here's my idea. Follow me on this. I'm going to go down a rabbit hole. Okay, and our best discussions are one that are off the cuff.
Do I need to have my pocket watch?
Maybe a flowchart. So, riddle me this, okay? Everyone always says, buy a new vehicle because it's more ecologically friendly, okay, and economically friendly because, you're doing better by the environment, okay? I'm going to take a step back. Mm-hmm. The cost to produce an older vehicle, because you talked about restoring old Jeeps, that carbon cost is already paid. The ore dug out of the ground to make it, all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
All it is basically redoing that vehicle. Now, you buy a Tesla or something like that, all that nickel is mined, a lot of caustic substance, plastics, the whole 9 yards. How do you feel is a way where I feel that restoring an older vehicle is actually more environmentally friendly because you can reuse old parts like cores and stuff like that and refurbish them rather than creating new. My attitude is that keeping an older vehicle on the road, to me, in the long run, is cheaper and better for the environment. What do you think?
That is a polarizing question, Scott.
And I don't mean to put you on the spot.
No, you're not putting me on the spot. What I'm going to say is you can paint two different pictures of a restoration. All right. One of them is by somebody who's paying attention to the ecology. The other one is the guy who's dumping the used motor oil out on the ground after he, drains the crankcase.
That's a no-no.
Agreed. And but there's also, a lot of there are additional environmental costs with refinishing cars, paint fumes and that stuff. But you know what? I gotta agree that the paint fumes in the paint booth with a local shop, if you use a reputable shop with an air filter system and that, it's no different than well, believe it or not, water-based reduces VOCs but does not eliminate VOCs. So you still have to have the volatile organic compounds to cross-link to form the paint.
Fair enough.
Simple drying leaves dust.
I got you.
But yes, it's a significant reduction. There's a lot to be said. I also think that there is, our heritage in the vehicles to keep. Go out right now and try and find a Willys. You can find them.
Yeah.
But compared to the numbers that were produced, how many are left?
Yeah.
And what is the ecological impact of scrapping a vehicle?
Right.
And the environmental impact of not even scrapping it, but just leaving it abandoned to decompose. There's hazmat on that side too.
Well, the reason why I brought this up because I know you recently helped John Carl help get his Willys running. I can't think today. Sorry.
Well, it's actually a CJ3A that John has, and it is done up as a military-ish vehicle, and it's a really neat project because it was a failed. Not failed. That's a bad term, and I apologize. It was just one that somebody was no longer really interested in finishing, and so John
got bored with it.
They got bored with it, and John asked me to come over and kind of help them through the startup and to get it moving, which we did that day.
So the previous owner got bored, sold it to John.
I believe, whether he got bored or had. I don't know why he sold it.
John picked up the ball and started restoring
John picked it up and finishing up. And so, he finished some of the overhaul elements and did some painting and did some repairs and replacements. Overall, I think if you can reuse, it goes back to the basic triangle: reuse, recycle, before you replace, kind of a thing.
Absolutely, yeah.
And there's a lot to be said for it. Can a restoration be done with a environmental mindset? Absolutely.
Okay.
And in that case, I think you'd be right. I think environmentally friendly restorations can be done with less environmental impact than a whole new vehicle. On the other hand, it's also one of those mystical black box areas that people who don't know how to do a restoration right can create a greater environmental impact because there's environmental controls on the manufacture of new vehicles. And a lot of these places are trying to go and become a zero carbon footprint factory that they consume and they don't release, kind of a thing.
Right.
And it's tighter controls. Go to the Jeep assembly plant and take a look at the waste stream is monitored, weighed, everything.
Yeah.
Whereas, Billy B. Good's little restoration shop, go behind the yard and see everything sitting out there. The batteries piled up. We're leaching lead into the environment.
Right.
Yeah. So, and that's why I call it's a little bit of an interesting environment depending upon your experiences and what you see. I can honestly see people coming at you and going, no, that's ridiculous. It's always better to just, dispose of and trade in and let them deal with the environment that way and then get a new one. And they can be right. And then I can also see other people going, wait a minute, all my batteries get turned in. All of my oil goes to the recycling center. When I had the body blasted, it's at a site that, collected the media and made sure that none of the paint contaminants got anywhere, and it's all. And then they could be right. So, I think both can be good and both can be bad. It's up to the individual to make sure whichever choice they make is good. Yeah. Now, the flip side, heritage-wise, the Jeep brand, the Jeep line, the history, I'd like to see more people restore.
Yeah.
And that's not an environmental focus. That's about the fact that Jeep was produced in just all kinds of different, unique, really neat varietals.
Mark Larson has got that forward control.
Yeah.
From the Jeep Lab.
So you have a forward control, but did you know the forward control came in different body styles and came with different factory options? The CJ3A was primarily designed as a farm vehicle. Yeah. Okay. There were plow blades, snow blowers, welders, it was built for the military as tugs. Obviously the DJs were used for the mail service for years. Now, go out and try and find a DJ. Everybody said, oh, they're just everywhere. Every post office has. Go find one.
Yeah.
And it hadn't been that long ago, and they've been scrapped by I'm going to say millions. And so you're losing your heritage. So I think, conscientious restoration. Yeah, I'm going to support that.
Yeah, no, because that's
God knows I do it enough as it is.
well, and that's the thing. Like I see Dave Meyer with his wagon.
Yeah.
Miss Daisy.
Wagoneer.
I mean, come on, man. Root beer float brown with the wagon white wheels. You know what I mean? Oh my goodness, that thing just screams just character and personality. Again, John with his CJ. Mark with his forward control. I would love to snag an old Jeep, but the problem I have is that I don't have the mental faculties or the skills to restore it. I don't know why, Jane, that was enough to cause a divorce. So I don't know if I really want that, but I'm all for seeing people take older vehicles that have character. My friend had a 55 Plymouth Belvedere. Okay. He bought this thing in 99? No, 96. And back then, that's when I learned about old iron. That's when I learned about the 3 on the tree. That's when I learned about a flathead 6-cylinder. And that captivated and interested it even furthered my want and desire of old American. Because here's this car that's beautifully sculpting, beautiful, very deadly steel dashboard, and it's like, this was what you drove because this was just utilitarian. It wasn't, beauty definitely was a part of the design process. But now if you look at a 55 vehicle to nowadays, MPV, mostly plastic vehicle, I can understand where people would go, I would have the other thing all day long. I understand this retro kickback, you know what I mean? Because there's some beautiful shapes and designs from back then.
Yeah, and it was a simpler time, although I have to laugh, folks. I'm sitting here having flashbacks going, he's talking about these antique engines that I used to overhaul. Flathead 6s.
I remember standing in the passenger seat of my mom's Ford Falcon in the very early 80s, because that's what kids did back then.
Yeah, and I drove to high school in a Ford Falcon, and it was just a used car. It wasn't an antique, so I'm the antique now, I guess.
Oh, stop it. Yeah, but Kevin,
yeah,
you're worth saving and restoring.
Yeah, right. Okay. Anywho, and on that sappy little comment,
Scott really does care.
He does.
Ouch. Whoa. It too?
A2.
Oh, whatever.
A2 Brute. Brutus.
I'm done getting schooled now.
Well, at least they taught me that stuff in school. So I'm sitting there watching him look at the time. Are we out of time?
Oh, we're at 48 minutes. It's not a huge deal.
We're not gone. Anyway, folks, this has been an interesting little roundabout session. Kind of a little on Jeeps, a little off Jeeps, a little bit here, there, and everywhere. I'm curious, though. Give me some feedback. You guys want a diesel Jeep? I'm really curious to see what our listenership wants and why do you want a diesel Jeep? Explain to me the why, and I'd really like to hear your input. I've given a lot of thought to it, but I will be the first one to tell you I tend to look at it from a very technical point of view. Go figure.
You? Nah.
It's been kind of an interesting wander down the what if lane, if you want to know, to think about diesels. And as I told Scott, back then I would have loved to have put the little V6 Cummins that came out into a TJ, but they went ahead and did that, and so did JP Magazine. What was it? Sweatsock was their Jeep that they turned it into an underwater driver, a submarine.
Well, Dory and I even looked at the diesel Grand Cherokees. Yeah, but the only ones we could find were 2-wheel drive.
Yeah, and so I laugh now because I know enough to know that a diesel off road would be really neat, but are the axles strong enough? Are the drive shafts strong enough? Because the torque you get out of a diesel can be rather brutal,
especially multiplied in low range.
Mm-hmm. So, is that what you want, or do you want to just? I'm beginning to come to terms with the fact that straight 6 4-liter is really not a bad hybrid.
It's a sweet spot.
It's gasoline. Yeah, it'd be nice. but it puts out oodles of torque. It doesn't really seem to care about being off angle. It keeps running even when the wheels are up, which is weird. It smokes a lot, but you roll it back over and
After scratching its tummy.
top it off and fire it up, and they usually run again.
Exactly.
But that's just me. So be curious to hear what you guys think about it.
Yeah, because diesels themselves are polarizing.
And
Either people
then the
or
other
don't.
thing I ask is if any of you guys have any experience with certain programmers that let you do things like resetting diesel, componentry as well as automotive. I'm trying to get one that will work with a Cummins in a semi chassis, a Ford diesel, a Mercedes diesel, as well as a Jeep gas and a Honda gas. Basically, all of the above, and like the rest of us, not totally strip the bank.
You want the internal combustion model.
Yeah, probably. I guess I don't quite need one to read a jet turbine off of off an aircraft yet.
Mr. Kevin, we have one that does horse feed. Never mind.
Yeah, I was going to say that could be applicable for me. So let's see. Anything else we need to add?
No, just thank you to everyone for everything they've done. Again, it's really kind of cool with Mark sending us those pictures. But again, as far as everything else goes, we're going to go and cut the show short a little bit because again, I think it's like you said, you covered pretty much all the bases. What do you think? We hear what's on the forums and Facebook groups and all that. But again, what is your feelings? Do you really want it? Do you think it's a good idea, bad idea? Would you buy it? You don't care because you want it? Mm-hmm. Or want it? Just let us know on thetrailpodcast@gmail.com.
Yep. All right, folks. Well, as we always say at the end of the show, I think we've been talking more than enough. Time to lock hubs and put the Jeep in 4-low.
And remember, always take nothing but pictures, your memories, and your trash when you leave the trail.
Please, or we're going to lose them.
Yes.
So take care of them. They are the only thing you can really pass on to your kids that isn't taxable.
He's got a point there, folks. And with that, we'll catch you on show number 96 coming out on July 1st.
All right. See you later. Bye now.
Bye.
Proceeding has been provided for entertainment only. Proper service and repair procedures are vital to the safe, reliable operation of all motor vehicles, as well as personal safety of those performing those repairs. Standard safety procedures and precautions, including the use of safety goggles and proper tools and equipment, should be followed at all times to eliminate the possibility of personal injury or improper service which could damage the vehicle or compromise its safety.
What he said. Thanks a lot for listening, guys. You guys have a great day.
Bye.
This has been a Bent Axle Media production.